August 8th, 2016. 2 years after I moved away. You saw vulnerability in me. I had a heart craving love, and you had an agenda. You brought me into your open arms and gave me everything I craved. I fell so hard, so fast. I was blind to the person you truly are. Even as the years passed by, I still thought that I knew you. You took me in, and piece by piece, you stripped me down to a mere thread of the person that I used to be. Left lost, alone, and broken, questioning my own sanity, and still you put the blame on me. You have taught me that not everyone has a heart. Your black soul, it must be, will be the one to live in misery. For I stand tall, with my head held high, because I am a fighter until the day I die. Hey, what up? Welcome back to the playground. Welcome if you're new here. It is me, Angey Lee. This is a little bit more of a serious topic. I know there's a lot of people that are curious about my history and my ex-husband. Because I was married. I was married for quite a few years. So here is the story. I did get into it a little bit in a video previously. I'll try to link it at the end here. Basically, in 2005, I met the man that was to be my husband. I met him at work. I worked at a restaurant that was half East Indian and half Mexican. The restaurant had originally been fully Mexican, but an East Indian couple bought it, and they transferred the restaurant, like there was a lounge side and a restaurant side. They kept the lounge side as Mexican, and they transferred the the restaurant side to an East Indian restaurant. So because it had both foods, it was hugely popular. I worked the Mexican part of the kitchen, and there was a man who worked the East Indian side of the kitchen. My ex-husband is East Indian. He's from Punjab. And he worked in both Indian restaurants as well as Mexican restaurants, so he knew both. So basically, he was brought in to be the helper, the one who could float around the kitchen and do whatever we needed help with, whether I needed help on the Mexican side or whether they needed help on the Indian side. And we kind of all after my ex showed up, we kind of all started, working together, and we kind of, we all became friends. They were both brought in on an immigration thing. They were put up in a house that was behind the restaurant, and a lot of the staff used to go to their house after work and have drinks. So, needless to say, one thing led to another, and we ended up together. In 2006, in September, we got married. We got married in 2006. I had many people tell me, and I ignored their warnings. But even his friends were telling me that I didn't know the real him. And I was always saying, well, he's good to me. He's good to me. And I was just so lonely. There was a man that I had been with, and I had broken up with him, and then I was you know, to me, he was so perfect, but not right. So that's what I felt at the time. So I broke up with him, and then I ended up staying single for 4 years. And then I had a 3-month fling with a man when I first moved to the city, who was in the military. And then I was single for another 4 years before I met my husband. So I was very lonely at the time, and he gave me everything I craved. You know, he was sweet. He was charismatic. You know, he never liked my mom, but he got along well with my stepdad. And when he was around, and my dad said that, made a comment about how I was in the best place I had ever been in my life. That's how much he was able to fool everybody that didn't really know. So we got married. It was very shortly after I found out that I was pregnant with our son on the 5th of September, and we eloped on the 20th. I didn't tell anybody in my family that we eloped. Nobody knew until my son was born, and they were coming to the hospital to see me, and I had to tell them that they were no longer looking for Angela Lawrence. They were looking for Angela Kumar. Because medical things, I always went by my full name, and by then I was going by my married name. Now, he had moved to the town that I was in from Montreal. He had all these stories from Montreal, and you know, he had told me he had been there for a while, and all the stories that he had, sounded like he was there for a long time. He had been married previous to me in the US to another girl. That didn't work out, and he was basically kicked out of the US, and he illegally came across the border to Canada. When he quit the job with the restaurant that we were working at, his immigration fell through there, and he tried to do refugee status, and I didn't know all this until after we broke up, like after we completely divorced. I guess it was like at the right before. It wasn't when we divorced, it was as we were divorcing. It was kind of, I started piecing everything together, and then coming across the paperwork kind of confirmed everything that I already thought, that I had already, you know, thought by then. So, when he couldn't get refugee status, that's when he asked me to marry him. Again, I didn't know all this until I came across the paperwork, and even questioning, you know, as our marriage went, even questioning it, it never dawned on me that that's, like, I never questioned it. It never dawned on me that that's the way that it was working. Like, to me, it didn't seem like that, you know, like, you know, he asked me to marry him, and of course we had been seeing each other for a while. We had discussed marriage already before, and so I said yes. And then after I had said yes, he said that things weren't working out with his immigration, and since we were already engaged, could could I sponsor him? Could I be his sponsor so that he could stay in the country? Because, you know, we were in love and we wanted to get married and all these things, and, you know, so I agreed. We were married for 2 years before things started getting, I guess, really bad. You know, he was never really there. But after a couple of years, it was like he was tired of, like, his immigration stuff never worked out. And even still, after I left him, he still wasn't a citizen. So I don't know where it stands right now. And frankly, I don't care. That's up to him and the government. They know my stance. They know what I went through, and they can deal with him. That's up to them. But he is completely out of our lives, for good reason. It took a lot of therapy to get back to somewhat of myself and kind of come back out of a shell and not be afraid to speak, not be afraid to, you know, I was living day to day, afraid to make sound. You know, I was afraid to talk. I was extremely, extremely depressed. And I put my whole life into my child. And that was kind of where it went. That's everything I did for my child. Before our child came along, you know, after we were married, before our child came along, and even shortly after, you know, I would be like, okay, well, let's do this family thing together. And then I would find out that he went and did it with his friends. So he didn't want to do it with us anymore. And then there would be times where, like, he would go out with people, and, you know, they'd go out to the beach or whatever, and I didn't find out about it until afterwards. And one of his friends' wives asked me why I never wanted to come, and I didn't realize that I had ever been invited, because I never was. I didn't know that they happened until afterwards. Our very first wedding anniversary, we were supposed to go for dinner, and he claimed to have forgotten. He made plans to help a buddy put up shelving in his store and was too tired and was basically falling asleep at dinner. Our second anniversary, which was supposed to be another special occasion, he ended up inviting a bunch of friends to party. You know, it was always a party with him. Like, it was never, you know, it was never not a party. Like, I tried to, you know, do the family thing, and that just, it didn't work out. He wasn't the right, like, before we got married, and actually first, after we were first married, you know, like, that's the thing. He was so good with other people's kids, and he just wasn't good with his own. But he also demanded a paternity test when our son was 7, and by then our son knew what was going on, so it was not a good thing. There were times, you know, when our son was a baby that he accused, you know, me of cheating and of the child not being his, because, of course, East Indian, and our child is not all that dark. He has blue eyes. He has lighter hair, you know. But I said right from the start, do the test. I don't want this to ever be a thing between us. I don't want this to ever be an issue. But he told me that he believed me, and obviously he didn't, because when it all came down to it, he wanted the test. And by the time he found out for sure that our son was his, Our son didn't want anything to do with him anymore, so that was, you know, his loss, and I didn't want anything to do with him anymore either. It took a long time to get the divorce. He put a stop to a lot of legal proceedings. He put a stop to a lot of medical proceedings for our son. Our son was going through some really serious depression at the time. There was a lot of changes happening, and it was for the better, but AJ doesn't handle well with change, so it was really, really hard on him, and his whole mind and body was affected by it for a long period of time. And every time I tried to get help for him, it was blocked. And I had to take him to court to basically say, like, our son needs this help. I had to have it done legally so that I could get my son into the proper help that he was needing, that was being recommended by the neurologist, because he was experiencing such severe migraines that he couldn't even stand straight. Like, he would try to stand up and he would fall over. Like, that's how bad his migraines were. That's how bad his depressions was at the time. Like, it was very severe. We had just recently lost our, well, we'd moved here to this place, which is like, okay, when my ex and I were married for 3 years, we separated, and I moved down the hall from him in the same apartment building because I couldn't really go anywhere. So we lived there for a while, and then it was also because my ex-husband refused to get a 2-bedroom place, and like, I didn't agree with, you know, like, having a child sharing a room with parents as they're growing up. Not that my ex ever slept in the room with me anymore. He always slept on the couch downstairs, but that was besides the point. So anyways, let me see. We were separated after 3 years, and I moved down the hall. And we tried to work things out for 2 years after that. Well, I tried to work things out. And then there was a situation that happened that basically ended it all. And he also didn't show up for our 5th year anniversary, and that's, you know, kind of a big one. So it was kind of like, that's it, that's over, that's done. So we moved here. When I finally, I had a friend help me with the finances to get out of there. It was a very bad neighborhood as well. Like, I've had people say that this neighborhood's bad. This neighborhood is really good compared to the one that we were in. So I had a friend help me financially to move here, and I did pay her back, completely 100% paid her back. So I'm so thankful for her. So we got here, and it was shortly after we got here that we lost my best friend to, she took her own life. And so 2 years prior to that, my stepmom also did that. So AJ knew what that was all about. He knew what it was all about, like, everything. We were close with her. We were close with her kids. I babysat her kids, you know, like, they were in my day home from the time that they were little. And, you know, and now the kids, AJ was 7, so they were 8 and 9 by this point. So they had been in our lives for a long time, and we lost her. And shortly after that, my ex started saying things to our son like, this will be your last Christmas with me because I'm not going to be here next year. He would say things like that he was going to take his life, and things like this. I also wanted to add in, as I'm editing and listening to the story of everything again, at this time, when all this was going on, I was going, our son was at a school that was near where where he lived. And at the time I was working for him out of his home. And so every morning we would take the bus to the transit bus to drop, my son and I would take the transit bus to drop my son off at school. And then I would walk from the school to my ex-husband's to start work for the day, because I worked out of his living room at the time. It's kind of a really long story as to how that all happened, and I'll get into that someday, but not in this video. But because of these things that were going on, and because he seemed to be I don't even know how to explain it. I was so worried that every morning I was worried that I was going to walk in and find a body. So I spent many months being in that mindset every time that I walked into the door every morning, being worried about that. And there were times where he would spend the whole day upstairs in his room, and I wouldn't know, I wouldn't hear any sound at all, so I wouldn't know if he was okay up there or not, and I was too scared to go up and check. That was just kind of, that was such a hard time. And it was because of the comments that were being made. It was such a manipulation tactic, and I know that now, but at the time I didn't. I was so invested in it, in everything, that I didn't know that it was just a manipulation tactic. Like everybody, so many people throw around the word narcissist. It's thrown around left, right, and center, but I didn't even know what a narcissist was until I was told that he is a true narcissist. And I had to look up what a narcissist was and how to deal with them. And it was after that I was able to manage the way that I dealt with him a little bit better. So I just wanted to add that in. When I first was trying to get the divorce going, and my ex at that time did want, for some reason out of the blue, wanted our son in his life, I was trying to make that happen, because for me, I thought it would be good. It would give me an opportunity. Now that I'm away from him, I'm in a place on my own. I'm in a place where, he can't just drop in any given moment, because even if I took the key back from him, he always had a freaking key. He always walked in at any time he wanted to. He would walk in anytime he wanted to. But now in my own place, moved, he couldn't do that anymore. So I thought, well, this is my chance to finally have a life. And, it's not my place to keep our child from him. So, I thought, okay, well, this will be an opportunity to, maybe they can develop that relationship that I was trying so hard to get them to develop for so many years. But that didn't happen. Our son went with him a few times, and he was always very upset when he came home. And he was scheduled to go there one day, my 7-year-old looked at me and said, "Mom, I think that if I go to Dad's, I don't think that I'm going to come home." And I said, "AJ, what do you mean? Your dad's not going to hurt you. Not like that." And he said, "Mom, I think I'm going to hurt myself if you make me go there again." So that day, I went to social services, I went to the police station, and I contacted the child helpline, and so many steps. And I told my ex that he was never going to have my child at his house ever again. After that, I fought for sole custody, and I got it. After I got sole custody, we changed both of our last names, not just mine, but his as well. So, that's why I don't talk about it a lot. It's very triggering for me. It's upsetting for me. It's upsetting for my son. It's not something that I really wanted, out there in the YouTube world, but of course there's people that are curious and they've got too much time on their hands, and it's in my son's best interest to not ever see that man again. It's in my best interest to not ever hear from that man again. That's why the court granted that, because the courts don't do that lightly. They don't do that lightly. So, in saying that, I'm sorry that this is kind of like a down video. It's very much a big part of why I am the way that I am and why I am who I am. I was hushed for so many years that now I'm not even sure yet who I am, where I stand in the world. I'm still figuring that out. I know there's a lot of bullies in the world, and I know that putting myself out like this opens myself up to them, but it also opens myself up to the good as well. There's a lot of good people out there. There's a lot of understanding people out there. I'm very proud, very, very proud of where I am. I've come very, very far. My son has come so very far, and we've got a really good relationship, and that's something that anybody that knows us would tell you, is that he's a good little man. He's bright, he's kind and caring and empathetic, and he stands up to bullies, and he doesn't tolerate trolls. And I'm not that great at that, but I taught him that, so I know the knowledge. I just gotta apply it myself, So, as I get upset about things, I find him sometimes telling me, "Mom, you're the one that taught me this. You're the one that told me this. You're the one that told me that." It's like, he's told me you need to listen to your own words. Everybody has bullies. Everybody has trolls. And that's the way it is. So that was kind of a bit of the history of my marriage. There's so much history in a 12-year marriage. It was only 5 years. We were together for 7 years, but we weren't divorced yet, and he was still around, though never really around, if you know what I mean. Yeah, so that's our story. That's the story. So if you have any questions for me about any of it, let me know. I'm here. Ask away. But be kind. Always be kind.